Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Inside the Naval Postgraduate School. From our campus in Monterey, California, I'm your host Alan Richmond right here on the Pentagon Channel. Welcome to the show. Well, in this episode we'll travel to Camp Roberts, California and take you to the recent relief exercise that we participated in. We'll also take you to our annual Robots in the Roses. But to start this episode, recently we had the opportunity to visit with the VCNO Admiral Mark Ferguson during his trip and visit to the Naval Postgraduate School. Following graduation from the U.S. Naval Academy with the class of 1978, Admiral Ferguson completed nuclear power training prior to entering the fleet as a surface warfare officer. His afloat assignments include service on board the USS South Carolina, USS Fife, and USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. He commanded the USS Benfold and Destroyer Squadron 18. In addition to various staff assignments, he served as a special assistant to the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe in Mons, Belgium. He has also served as the Assistant Commander, Navy Personnel Command, Chief of Legislative Affairs, and Chief of Naval Personnel. Admiral Ferguson holds a master's degree in computer science from the Naval Postgraduate School and completed a National Security Fellowship at the Harvard Kennedy School. Admiral, thank you very much for taking time to appear with us here on Inside NPS. I'm wondering if we could start off and have you talk a little bit about why you think it's important for an officer to have continuing education, particularly at NPS.
Well, I think there's three things. And in our experience, we train individuals to replicate, we educate to reason, and we focus on character development so that those individuals will act in an appropriate and ethical way when no one's watching. And the challenges that we will face in the future involves officers who can reason and face those new challenges that technology and security threats will bring to us as a Navy and a nation.
In your opinion, how do you think the Naval Postgraduate School fills that need?
Well, I'm an alumni of the school, and I think when I came here, it was my first exposure to officers from foreign countries, my first exposure to officers from other services in solving complex technical problems. It exposed me to the most advanced research and innovative thinking in industry as well as within the Department of Defense, and really set me on a lifelong course of a love of learning and an exposure to innovation, which I think are the critical components that the school generates.
Well, of course, we're very proud that you're an NPS alumnus. I'm just wondering, as you look back on your time here at NPS, what was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I think if you were to ask my wife, and we both showed up here in 1983 as newlyweds and a young lieutenant at our first duty station together after we just got married. And I think she would say that the biggest takeaway was a tremendous family time that we spent here in learning. For me, in the education sense, it was the rigorous thought process that's necessary to do good research, good analysis. It leads to good decision making.
Well, NPS has certainly been in existence for well over 100 years now. And as we look toward the future, what do you see ahead for the Naval Postgraduate School?
Well, we continue to see this is the one institution that can take a fleet experienced officer after several years of operational time, either in aviation, submarine, surface ships, one of our other specialties, come here, take a time out to reflect, and then really put academic rigor, strong thought processes, like I said, innovation, exposure to industry, and take that crucible of operational experience and then apply it in an academic setting, and then from here go out and be an even better leader and officer.
Well, up next, we travel south to Camp Roberts, California for the relief exercise. Here's Dr. Ray Bittner to explain. Can you tell us a little bit about what relief constitutes, Ray?
Sure, Alan. Relief, or research and experimentation for local and international emergency and first responders, originally began as a thread in the TNT events that are sponsored by the Special Operations Command. And the concept was, let's focus on our ability to bring support and communications capability to collaborative nations in the special operations environment, with special operators being kind of our primary lead in a lot of countries for training other militaries and other responders. So let's build on that and get away from some of the other aspects of special operations and focus on collaborative capabilities and how you can help people better respond to disasters. That improves national security by improving the relationships between the United States and our allies and partners. So a pretty important mission set. The Special Operations Command allowed us to start focusing a thread or a series of experiments at their TNT events on these types of operations. As we transitioned into a joint environment with the Joint Interagency Field Exploration, or JIFIX events, we took the relief thread there, since there's a larger group of interagency players in the emergency and first responder kind of communities. So it's an opportunity for us to kind of grow the relief thread and be more dynamic with it.
And I think the common thread through all of these is support of the warfighter / national security, but also for the civilian population, and it all revolves around collaboration to support all these agencies.
Absolutely. We see these events in a grand scale as how do we best utilize the investment in both defense and civil government services. So how do we help the military units that support disaster response get the right information that they need to do what they do best? How do we help government officials understand what's happening to the individual victims and responders? If you think just the size and scope of the Sandy event and how many people are affected over such a broad area, and earlier than that with the hurricanes in the Gulf Coast, it's a really monumental task. And when we do this overseas for a major event over there as well, these are complicated collaboration events with ad hoc organizations, a lot of non-governmental organizations, and they each have their own processes. And what hasn't worked is trying to get everybody to do it the same way. So what we have to learn is how do we help everyone do what they do best and share the information so that the right people get the right information at the right time. Now, from a Naval Postgraduate School perspective, it might not look at first glance that that's as militarily focused as you might expect. But indeed, that's an important part of the Department of Defense mission is building those ties to other countries by being able to do this, and certainly supporting here at home through appropriate channels as the need arises. To that end, we have a group of a course, actually, the Information Warfare Systems Engineering course. Students are out here working on their class project, which is to determine the information flow through FEMA to accomplish all its tasks. So they've been monitoring the FEMA folks, walking with them, trying to learn if we're going to embed technology in this organization, how do we do that in a smart way and shorten the learning curve, if you will. The military's learned a lot of lessons the hard way there. Can we transfer some of that knowledge to FEMA? And in return, can we better learn how to support civilian agencies as the military as we go forward? So we have colleagues, from various schools on campus, from systems engineering to information sciences out here. We have the students, we have thesis students out here. We have students from other universities out here as well. This is that dynamic collaborative learning environment that NPS does so well.
Well, during our visit at Relief at Camp Roberts, we had the opportunity to speak with Randall Zeller, who's a senior executive with DHS. Mr. Zeller, tell us a little bit about your area of responsibility with Homeland Security.
The Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate was set up when the department was set up to focus S&T on DHS sorts of issues. We've pulled together a number of agencies that hadn't been pulled together before, but Congress was certainly interested in making sure that the specific needs of the department, and particularly what we call the Homeland Security Enterprise, those scientific and technology issues were being addressed by somebody that was focusing on it.
So what are some of your biggest challenges with all of this?
I think at the top level, the challenge is getting a clear definition of what's needed. We call them operational requirements. Similar to the military, if you don't really know what you're developing from the warfighter to you're going to have a difficult time fielding a system that's going to be used. We have set up a first responder resource group made of up about 150 first responders. We've kind of categorized them in 4 areas: law enforcement, fire, EMS, and emergency management. So we've tasked these responders, and they're all kind of respected in the community as the community understands them speaking for them and appreciates that. So we use them to kind of define the requirements and help us write the operational requirement documents. And then we go from there looking for industry partners or even partners in government to see if we can't meet those needs.
What is your overall goal as you come here to Relief at Camp Roberts?
We were introduced to field experimentation through Dr. Bittner about a year and a half ago. We have participated kind of as an observer years prior to that, But we began looking at this process as a way of getting our responders into the field, put their hands on equipment that is here for experimentation, and then help us by operating the equipment define the requirements better. So last summer, I guess it was, we brought in police chiefs and fire chiefs. Our specific issue was looking at locating firefighters, wildland firefighters, in 3 dimensions, their proximity to their logistics train, as well as their proximity to danger. So we used the NPS announcement to kind of make sure the world knew what we were looking for. Working with NPS, we were able to screen a number of technologies and get them invited out here. We had 2 specific technologies that addressed our requirement. We started our experimentation with that. There were about 7 other technologies that enhanced our ability to track firefighters in a wildland environment. So we were able to do ad hoc experiments testing that. And our outcomes have been pretty good, very, very promising. One of our small UAV makers mentioned to us that interacting with responders and people that are actually end users for the equipment saved him, as a private company, $2 to $4 million of his own research and development funding, and also got his product to market a year early. And hey, that benefits us all. We drive the price point down so a typical fire department or police department can buy the technology, and then the producers get to market quicker, and then they tap into a market that could be as many as 2.5 million first responders.
In between episodes of Inside NPS, stay connected and up to date on the latest daily news and information from our campus through the university's official Facebook site. Take a look and like us at facebook.com/NPS Monterey. Stay with us. More to come after the break. Well, during the relief exercise, we had the opportunity to fly some of our UAVs. Here's Kevin Jones to explain Talius. Kevin, tell us a little bit about this particular aircraft and what you're testing out here at Relief.
Okay, the program is called TALUS. It stands for Tactical Long Endurance UAS. It actually started as a student project. We had a Swedish PhD student a few years back who wanted to create gliders that would autonomously find free lift in the environment, so capture thermals. And so he actually did it. He was, I think, the first person in the world to do cooperative thermaling. So one of the big problems is that it's easy to stay in a thermal once you find it. The hard part is finding it. So his idea was if you put multiple gliders up there, they can each be looking for thermals in different areas, and if one finds it, he shares the data with the others. And so he was the first person, I think, to actually get 2 gliders to share a thermal and ride up together. So what we're trying to do now is turn it into something a little bit more practical. So we're trying to turn it into a UAV that can actually carry out practical missions for the military or FEMA, other emergency response groups. So they can, the idea is you'd like to have something you could just put up instantly in an emergency that would give you some capability for 24/7. So for example, you could put a cell tower in it and fly it above a city that just got wrecked, providing cell coverage for like a week at a time without having to land it and without a human having to get involved and telling the airplane where to go. In order to do that, we need more than just finding free lift from thermals. We also need a way to run the electronics. So we're in the process of putting a large solar array on the aircraft and a very large battery bank that can get recharged from the solar. It's not a trivial process trying to size everything for that. It turns out that the driving force for the whole system is what is your base power? How much does it take electrically to keep all of your sensors and flight control systems going? And the whole aircraft and the size of the array, the size of the batteries, everything gets sized based on that power budget. So we're out here today really trying to characterize the airframe to see exactly how much power it's going to take to keep the airplane aloft. And then we're going to start working on cutting back on the power that's needed to fly it.
And how is the testing going? We had a film of a takeoff and landing yesterday as opposed to today. Is everything going as planned?
Yeah, today was actually better for us. What we were trying to do, characterizing the airframe, we actually did not want any free lift in the environment. And yesterday turned out to be a spectacularly good day for free lift. And so without even trying to find lift, we actually had a lot of effort to try to get the airplane down. It wanted to stay up. So we didn't get any useful data yesterday, but today the air's pretty dead, so we actually got some good data.
Well, you're flying a multitude of aircraft out here at relief this time, and so as we move from this one over to some of the other winged craft that you have, tell us a little bit about what the plan is for today and what you're testing on those.
Okay, so I'm also working with the Arsenal Lab, and they're doing a few different things. The idea there is to get a very low-cost aircraft that can be put up in a swarm, basically a large flock of aircraft, to give wide area coverage of some service, whether it's ISR or communications relay or something else. And we want to keep the cost of the aircraft down to something that small groups can afford, say local emergency response groups. So we're talking maybe on the order of $1,000 for a system that could fly for about an hour. So if you lose the aircraft, not a big worry, but the aircraft are actually quite rugged. What we're going to be testing, we have probably one of the lower cost off-the-shelf UAVs. It's actually made to be sold as a UAV, but it's still kind of high for us. It's about $12,000 per unit. We're going to try to get 10 of those aloft, which I don't think anyone has done yet. We did 7 a few months ago, but nobody's done 10. So we'll see if we can get all 10 airborne, running off two ground stations, so each operator will have 5 aircraft that they're controlling. So that'll be interesting to see how they handle that.
So we're watching out for the Red Baron today.
Yeah. And then we also have another aircraft trying to lower the cost. We've gone into the hobby market. So the hobby market makes aircraft that look very, very similar to the UAVs, but they don't have the expensive autopilot. Instead, there's a new community that's kind of coming out of the hobby industry, making extremely low-cost autopilots. Their capability is still kind of an unknown, and so we're out here kind of evaluating whether or not that autopilot will be able to do the job. The autopilot on the commercial UAV is about $5,000 a piece. The autopilot from the hobby industry is $170 a piece.
Wow.
So a huge change in price. The question is it capable enough to do what we want to do? So we'll see how that goes.
We'll put them up in the air and we'll see.
Yep.
All right, Kevin, thanks. Well, up next, we had the opportunity to speak with one of the FEMA senior executives who was attending relief. Here's Desi Mattel-Anderson. Tell me a little bit about your agency's involvement in what we're doing here at Camp Roberts during relief.
Yes, actually we've been to a couple of experimentations here at Relief, and lucky for us, we have taken an approach of a disaster survivor-centric focus and a forward-leaning mentality, and that has actually been, we just released our imperatives for the agency from 2015 to 2019. Based on those imperatives, one of the areas is to learn and innovate as an organization. So part of why we are here out in Paso Robles in California with our friends at NPS and DoD and others is to start taking the great ideas we have at the agency and nationwide and build upon them and put them into action.
And who are some of the other partners that you're working with, and talk a little bit about the kinds of projects that you like to be involved with?
We're working with FEMA recovery along with a lot of local and state groups in California. We have San Diego County, Sacramento, the state is here, but we're looking at rethinking, redesigning our disaster recovery centers to make it more disaster survivor focused. So one of the things we're doing is we're running people through a physical layout and process of flow of the centers to register people faster and have a more disaster survivor-centric focus. But that's not what we're limited to. We're also taking a look at secure Twitter and seeing if we can get social media a stronger presence with that within the agency and catalyze messages out to the community during disaster. And we're flying UVAs to see about if we can get bandwidth and internet connectivity for our FEMA Corps members who are out in the field actually registering people on iPads to allow for faster, quicker registration in a mobile environment. That's just the tip of the iceberg, but that's what we're doing today.
And what are some of the biggest challenges that you're finding with all this changing technology, almost moment by moment? How does that affect the long-term plans of what you're trying to find out?
We have to be more adaptable to our environments and more agile. And I believe FEMA's really getting that. And like we've talked about with leadership and that imperative of learning and innovating as an organization, we've got to embrace what's going on around us, the world around us, and take those new technologies and those design and thought processes and the system thinking and get that and embed that in the culture of our agency.
And what's the way ahead as we look towards the future? What goals have you set?
One of the goals is to continue to learn and innovate with our partners. So from 2015 to 2019, those are the imperatives that Craig Fugate, our administrator, has put out. We believe that our goal is to take a more disaster survivor-centric focus. So that means incorporating our local and state partners into the mix for the innovations we're doing, along with bringing the innovation into the field. So the goals are to take these great ideas, foster and cultivate them, and then build them out in field experimentation, such as at Camp Roberts, finally exercise them with our agency and our partners nationwide, and then subsequently deploy them into disaster. It doesn't always work that way, as we deployed an innovation team in Sandy. Sometimes we got to take the great ideas and we got to do it right on the spot, right there, then and there. But the key message is we want to critically think about what we're doing at the agency and better help the disaster survivors when we're dealing with disasters.
Well, thanks for all the great work you're doing and for being part of the relief effort here at Camp Roberts.
Thank you so much.
You'll want to stay with us because coming up after the break, our own Natalie Stamey takes us to Robots in the Roses. Be right back. Well, here at the Naval Postgraduate School, one of our favorite annual events is the Robots in the Roses. What is Robots in the Roses? Here's Natalie Stamey to explain. Natalie.
What's in a name? Well, quite a bit actually, if you're speaking about the Consortium for Robotics in Unmanned Systems, Education and Research, better known as CRUISR. Here at the Naval Postgraduate School, CRUISR is leading the charge into the future of unmanned systems through research and development. And they don't stop there. The students and faculty of CRUISR want to share their understanding of these new technologies. As a common motto among CRUISR member states, conversation leads to collaboration, and collaboration leads to innovation. Here's how they're making that happen. CRUISR heralded its launch in 2011 with a robotics research fair held in the NPS Rose Garden and aptly titled Robots in the Roses. Now 3 years and one location change later, the event is still showcasing the best and brightest student and faculty innovations from the CRUISR program.
That's probably one of the distinct advantages of this type of a research fair, is to bring people together and have them start chatting with one another, and that's really what inspires innovation in these types of unmanned technologies.
This year was marked by significant growth for the CRUISR program as membership exceeded the 1,000 mark, and the participants at this year's fair included both local high school and college students, in addition to the NPS community.
We started with about 30 people centered on campus. Within a year, we had over 500 academia, industry, and now we have over 1,070 members from government, from academia, from this campus here, to worldwide.
CRUISR's interests and those of its members are far-reaching and intricately detailed. From autonomous watercraft to unmanned aerial vehicles, the range of ideas is seemingly endless. And as federal purse strings tighten, unmanned solutions are getting a lot of attention, both within and outside the DoD.
One of the key areas that we're moving towards is where we don't have just one robot interacting with a human. We might have large groups of robots kind of coordinating to do something, whether it's working together to put out a fire or working to maybe collectively scour an area for a lost hiker. I think we're starting to see more of these systems kind of work together and talk with one another, and in fact talk with human teammates as well.
Behind these whirling bots and quirky critters are NPS students who want to advance the methods used by the Department of Defense to carry out its missions. Students like Coast Guard Lieutenant J.B. Zorn, who sees his efforts as a building block for the future use of unmanned systems.
So I was focusing on kind of a holistic approach to all the different missions that unmanned maritime systems could provide for the Coast Guard, additional capabilities. Things like undersea domain awareness, maritime domain awareness in general, and some of the more unique Coast Guard missions like aids to navigation and even oil and ice type applications. I really hope that the Coast Guard is able to use some of what I found as a foundational type framework to hopefully lay out a strategic roadmap for planning for not only the vehicles but the systems and policies that we need to adopt to actually implement these to help the Coast Guard in the future.
The ethical employment of unmanned systems is a major topic of consideration in the CRUISR program. Dr. Chung asserts that the CRUISR students are not only asking how their development should be applied,
but they're actively involved in recommending what they see is the best application for their technology.
They're often at the forefront of that conversation. Sometimes they're even leading that conversation by the type of research that they get to perform in. And I think that's exactly what we're here for.
It's that diverse input that we get in the community that we've created that not only helps our students, but also informs the larger community about employing unmanned systems both ethically and intelligently.
Cruiser has given me the opportunity to not only network with other people, not only in industry, but in defense, but also provide me kind of a frame of reference to view these unmanned systems and their different capabilities.
We'd like to extend a special thank you to Cruiser Director Captain Jeff Klein, as well as Dr. Chung for letting us explore this year's Robots in the Roses. If you would like to learn more about Cruiser, you can visit the Naval Postgraduate School website at nps.edu and search Cruiser. For Inside NPS here on the Pentagon Channel, I'm Natalie Stamey. Alan, back to you.
Thanks, Natalie. Well, that's it for this edition of Inside the Naval Postgraduate School. From Monterey, California, I'm your host, Alan Richmond, right here on the Pentagon Channel. We'll see you next time. Take care.